What is going on, everybody? And welcome to another technical analysis where I dive into the entries and exits of stocks that I am looking at. If that sounds like something you're interested in, consider subscribing, as I do also provide a weekly update where I go over current events, scheduled events that could potentially change the direction of the market. So check that out as well. And you can follow me on X at Hemi137, as I do provide daily pulses of the market to get you in tune with the market each and every day. So before we get started, remember to hit the like button and let's dive right in. Now, obviously, Friday we had some big news. We had the jobs numbers. So we had a huge red candle come down back into this 58.51. And if you've checked out my other video, you know this week is going to be a very, very big week and potentially can be enough to cause us to break this level here, this 57.24. If that does break it, you are then looking at a period where we've kind of just been going up nonstop. And if you actually adjust this line, I just had it adjusted, but it makes sense more now that we are on a higher time frame. We have actually broken out of this wedge. This ascending wedge that's been super tight, and we've only had 3 red candles, has now been broken. And so now the monthly's been broken. We have retested it, and now we could potentially start selling off. So now we got to start looking at some of these major levels here. We got the 57.31. I got another level here at the 56.30, and then another current level at 54.26, and then a really strong support at that 52.46. Yes, I do believe we can correct. We have to see how much of a correction that is. A lot of people are saying we may only get a 25% correction on here, which would be even a 20% correction or so. So it kind of put us around this area. Maybe 25 would probably be more of a bounce area, because the 4600 mark, because you do have really solid support there. So we may pull back to that far. We don't know. Again, it all depends on how you're going to have a series of events. I do believe what's going to happen is once Trump takes office, there's going to be a lot of events that are going to play out, and we have to kind of see how that does play out. But technical wise, we have broken, so you can expect some sort of a pullback. Normally it's 75% of whatever this move is. So typically you would probably at least come down on the 5K mark. We can anticipate that, but we'll have to see. If we start getting a lot of fear all at one time, we have to see what develops. But nonetheless, we have broken technically. So now we need to watch these levels. I think we can at least attempt down to that 5600 mark. And then we kind of see where we go from there. But let's not get it too ahead of ourselves. What we do know is we did break out of that wedge. So for Bitcoin, let's dive right into Bitcoin. Bitcoin is looking technical wise on the monthly. It does look like another bull flag here. But again, you have to realize you've run up over 500, I think 68% from the bottom back here in December of, was that 22? You've essentially ran up since that point. Now, I do anticipate potentially a pullback, at least this 72. I think you'll get a strong bounce off of that. It could potentially push us up to the 120. Then that might be all you have left on the cycle, and then start selling off again. We don't really know. That's just an assumption that what I'm going off of. But as of right now, you're kind of holding between this 1K mark and this 88K mark. So if we do break the 88K mark, I am anticipating a big dive down the 75. So just be mindful of that. And then we'll kind of see and take it from there. Again, depending if inflation starts to come back, which I am anticipating it coming screaming back, especially with China messing with the bonds as well. If that starts to come back, big tech will sell off and Bitcoin will sell with big tech. So that is one thing has been shown in the past to be correlated. We'll see if that continues. I do believe cryptocurrency isn't going to just be this own currency. I think a lot of people, I think the intention was to have it that way, but ultimately understand that institutions are buying too much of Bitcoin. They have too much control over it for that to actually happen at this point. So we'll see what happens. But nonetheless, I think it'll be heavily manipulated, much like gold. Prices for gold and metals just have been held down for years. Maybe we lose a lot of volatility now that a lot of institutions start owning it, but we'll have to see. So, but nonetheless, we'll see how this plays out this week. Again, we start getting bank earnings on Wednesday, and inflation that may be enough to break us below that. But that's kind of what I'm more watching for, this gap fill for than for this to go up. And again, that 120 I think is kind of cap. I do believe we can pull back one heavier time, kind of much like we did over here. How we had a massive pullback. If I can shrink this down, we had a massive pullback and then one last. We barely broke all-time highs and then we sold off. I think this is going to be similar here. We got a pullback to 72, then potentially try to 1 to 120. I don't know how close we're going to get, and then potentially roll over and do another sell-off until the next cycle. Could be a possibility. Again, we'll see. But nonetheless, we'll go from there. So, and again, just remember, every time you do these cycles, your bottoms become a little bit higher. Which again, you're not going to have like these massive moves from 31 where it went up, thousands of percent back here. This 07. Yeah, we went up 18,000%. You're not going to see that anymore. That's going to start getting cut in half the more and more you make these higher lows. So just keep that keep that in sight for the next potential cycle around. Again, a lot of people are talking for super cycles. I mean, this is a massive move. It's just not taken off the bottom here at the 31. So again, when you're talking about 25, it's very different. So with that being said, let's move on over to, I want to bring up VGT. VGT is one I might jump in. If we get a major sell-off, I want to kind of look at this one here and grab a piece of this potential pie here. Again, much like the market, I'm kind of looking, see, as you can see, you got like almost a really solid base here at the 450. Again, the market is very much correlated, and the market is pretty much going off of what tech is doing at this point. It's mirroring almost exactly what tech, and again, your most heavily weighted stocks are all tech. So we'll see what happens here. But again, there's some solid support here. I wouldn't be surprised if for whatever manufactured event occurs, we could sell off and hit the support. I'm expecting if we do hit the support, you do want to probably put automatic buys there, because I think it's gonna bounce massively out of there. I don't know if it'll be the recovery bounce and start going back up again. But again, I'm kind of anticipating that I got a funny feeling we're going to come back and retest that level. And then we might get a really, really solid bounce out of that. It could lead us into more higher highs. So VGT, one I'm watching, but again, current levels right now is that 600, and it needs to break down below that. And the 614 is kind of the top as of right now. So we'll watch that. And then Tesla, of course. Tesla, I really want this thing to retrace. It's starting to pull back a little bit. It needs to break this 385 has been holding really well. We'll see if after earnings, what the price action looks like. Maybe we start selling off. But your next big level to the downside is 353. I think we can potentially see like around a 300. That might be our lowest low at this point. Again, just all depending on inflation. There's a lot of things that need to come into that train of thought. But ultimately, right now, what I'm thinking is because of the massive push up, I do believe you're going to get in a humanoids, and that's going to be, you're going to have like an NVIDIA type rip out of this. So I'm not trying to let this sell off too heavy because I don't want to miss out either. So 350, maybe even an entry point here with anticipation that this could potentially even drop to 300, the 310 mark, and then maybe even down here to the 270. I don't see it getting to these lows like it did before. Anything is possible. You do have to keep that in mind. But as of right now, that's kind of what I'm looking at for Tesla. I do believe it's going to be one of the strongest ones moving forward, as it has a lot going for it. So, and RX, I keep bringing up this one because I really like it going into the new year. They got a lot of everything that they've done. All the tests that they've done right now have been passing with flying colors. This year, they're going to have a lot of releases on their stage 2s and of their drugs. It's an AI pharmaceutical company, so industry leading. NVIDIA's second heaviest investment. So it is holding this $6 mark right now. I think that could potentially be a good entry with anticipation this thing could potentially drop down to 5. And then I think from that point, that's bottom, and then we could potentially start really running up on this thing. There's a lot of short pressure on this thing, so I think this thing will be one of the ones that explode going into it. AMD is another big one I am really watching for going into this year. Again, you have to understand these particular, depending on the stock and what's given and where we are in the cycle, it depends. Majority of the time, it's probably going to be a swing. So you do need to keep that in mind. It could be a couple months. It could be maybe even a year or two. You have to understand what I'm waiting for is, since it's bottoming out, I feel like it's getting close to a bottoming process. You just have to be patient enough for it to start recovering from that sign, and then that's when you take profit. If you get 30-40% out of a stock, you take profit out of there and just wait for others, just rotate in the next ones that are bottoming out and do the same thing. With that being said, again, I think AMD is one of those. I think your bottom here, you may hit 110, and that might be it, 109. And I think it could strongly recover out of this moving forward. So that's one thing I am watching. But I really do like AMD. So those three are ones I'm really, really liking. Obviously, I still like Palantir, but it is way too overextended. I want it like under around 30 if possible. Would I consider it? Again, you've had such a massive move over this past year and so much hype around it. I do believe it's a strong AI case. But again, it's too overextended. You need to cut this move in half, in my opinion, for me to even consider this again. I think they still need to do a lot more work to continue to scale the growth. Right now, they do have some good products and continuing to do so. But again, I think right now this move is just too big for it right now. Could be wrong. This thing could continue to go up, but I don't want to get back into this until it at least pulls back down to these levels. Once it starts hitting that $40 mark, I may consider it, but it needs to at least cut half of this move down. Amazon's another really big one. I do really like this one, but again, just like the market, it needs to correct. Your bottom may be roughly around here, the 150 mark, maybe what you get with this one. Again, just depending on how news rolls out, will kind of really dictate how we play this one. But I really like Amazon moving forward as of right now. Again, it's very much in this just upward trend, straight up. And you believe me, I think you're going to get a lot of volatility, straight down, straight up volatility in this Trump market. So just keep that in mind. But as of right now, again, too high. A lot of these are overextended. I'm well aware of that. So I'm not saying buy these now. You need to wait for massive pullbacks on these. I'm kind of just going through the list of the ones I really like. If we get a massive pullback on this, that I'll be trying to enter these. I do really like Shopify. I think it's still a great company. Really like it. If you could get down here at this $50 mark again, we'll see if that's potentially possible. But continue to watch and see this right now. The ceiling right now is about 116 right now. So I'm watching that one as well. SoFi is another huge one. I really want to get in this one again. I've ridden this one many times at these lower levels. I don't think we're going to potentially see 6. I think what may happen is this may sell back under 10, and that might be your only chance. But especially because you're starting to break this level here, I think it was a critical level to hold to be more bullish. That's $15 mark. So if that continues to sell off, again, I think you got some pretty solid support here at 10. That may be as low as we get. Again, we don't really know, but it's about as close to bottom as we can get, and you would probably start DCAing at that point. And then ELF, obviously, I still really like ELF as well. The only thing, again, I can maybe a problems with tariffs, but we have to see. But again, cosmetics do very well, especially in the current kind of market sentiment you're in. Hoping this thing can draw back into under $100, I think would be ideal. I could definitely DCA really heavy in the $100 market. I think you'd be more than perfectly okay there. So looking at that one as well. Meta, again, this one is already at 600. This thing would have to massively correct like it did way back here when it went under $100 for me to get Meta. I think Meta is a great company as well. Now that they've kind of reestablished themselves, but again, this has to correct. This move has to be cut in half to even start considering it. You have to start waiting for this thing to dump back down to like 350 to really even start looking at Meta. So I'm not really worried about that. I'm not going to go over Nvidia. Much rather take AMD. I think has bigger growth right now. I think Nvidia is kind of stalling as far as growth. I think it will continue to do well, but I think the growth won't. AMD will have larger growth than Nvidia moving forward. So I don't want to go over that one. That's just my opinion. Again, just remember that. And then the next one we have, obviously, let's jump to BA. Again, this has this massive wedge breakout. It is retracting. Could be an entry point. I don't really like this company, but again, it's being held up by essentially the government, so maybe worth an entry. Just to play this out, this may actually come back down to the 150 mark. Again, just depends on how things play out, but it is attempting to break out. So just keep that in mind. This thing may retrace all the way back to the 260. Tends to do that quite frequently. So just keep that in mind. So that's still a good play potentially. JP Morgan, obviously this thing is very overextended like everything else. This thing needs to correct. I think it can get some solid support here at the 185 or 178. Not saying it will hit that, but this week they are pricing in a lot. They're pricing in almost double and a little bit extra for this one because it has earnings on Wednesday. I'm not anticipating going bad, but if you have a bunch of bad bank earnings or potentially bad forward guidance, this thing can start selling off. One thing you need to consider again with the banks this week is you have the bank term funding program that is running out of money. So again, they can't continue to bail everybody out. And Yellen keeps mentioning this, that we need to stop spending as much as we are. It's just not sustainable. And that with the actions being taken by China in their bond market could cause our market to go into some havoc. So we don't know how heavy that selling could be, but you really have to anticipate there's going to be some sort of selling. We just don't know how much. Lemonade is another one. I've been watching this thing roughly around this like $16 mark for such a long time, and then I had this massive push up against AI for insurance. So if this thing does potentially break back down to 21 and starts flirting around the $15 mark, this is one I really want to watch. Again, I really like this one. Even UPST, which I think I've passed already, but UPST is probably way too high at this point. This thing was down to like $12, I think, back in 22. Yeah, this thing was way down here at $12. So if this thing retracts back to the 22, potentially, this thing does massive moves. A lot of people really like Upstart. So, but we'll see if this thing does pull back moving forward. So I do really want to watch this one as well. Another potential play could be Oxy. It's really kind of hit or miss with oil and gas right now, just because there's so much manipulation going on, but it's still holding this level at 50. I still very much believe this is going to be a massive run up. There's going to be a Berkshire Hathaway has bought a ton of Oxy. So just keep that in mind as well. They do pay a dividend, so that may be why. But ultimately, I do believe in the next couple of years, with all the drilling and everything, that it could be a really good play coming into 2025. So do keep that in mind. There is a lot of robotics plays. I don't really want to go over them right now. If you just say the word robotics, it's like AI and things just blow up. So I want to get in the real good ones. And number one is Tesla with that one, just because they can mass produce, they can scale. A lot of these companies can't scale. So you're kind of looking for the pick and shovels. Other plays that could potentially play out there as well. So I'm watching those, but ASML could be one of those pick and shovel plays as well. It has sold off pretty heavy. It is highly priced. We'll see if it gets rejected and sells back off. If it starts getting below 500, I think that's almost definitely a buy at that point. But again, we have to wait and see if it does sell off that heavy. But yeah, it makes it's very heavily involved in the whole semiconductor space and chips, and so I think it can play heavily. But again, I think I really prefer if it gets below at least the 600 before even attempting to buy into this, especially because we don't know how much if any fallout there is with AI or anything, if there is a bubble and it does burst. Again, if there is a bubble, it's ultimately, I think, because of what you're looking at is just a lot of companies have been claiming AI and they don't really have the proof or concept to really show that. And at this point, we're getting into the proof of concept, and there's very few actual companies that have proof of concept. And I think the best ones you have, or obviously you have Tesla, you have Microsoft, which is kind of hit or miss with Microsoft, but and then you have Palantir, you have RXRX, I think are probably your best use cases for AI. And aside from that, it's really hard to find others. I know this other one I have down here supposed to go for, I believe it's robotic surgery. It's I can't see it for yes, ISRQ. I believe it's this one here. But this has gone straight up as well. So, I mean, this would have to really pull back heavy to the 340s for me to even consider this as well. So, but we'll watch and we'll see. So stay with the good, strong names. A lot of these other ones are like these dollar ones that have been pumping. I'd really be careful with these. You can make some good money off this, but again, you're risking a lot. It's not something you bet the bank on. Maybe a little bit of positioning in here and there, but again, you are fighting liquidity when you're talking about penny stocks. That's why I don't really bring these up. So, but with that being said, again, it'll be a very interesting week. We'll see how we end up next week. The videos next week, I'm sure, will be quite entertaining and quite long, but we do have a lot this week. You need to anticipate that. Expect a lot of volatility. And then next Monday, again, understand that, again, Trump's going to be coming into office. So expecting events even to occur this week outside of what's scheduled that could potentially play into what's going to potentially happen in the future. So with all that being said, again, not trying to fear monger, just trying to take advantage of the markets. And right now, if it's overextended, there's no point buying stuff. It's better to wait for things to pull back and then go from there. So with all that being said, again, remember to hit the like button, and I will see you on the next one.